name is Jamar Buchanan, and this is the Highest Investment Podcast. So I want to take a minute, and in this story, I really want to share something that it's an easier story to talk about now, but it was very difficult for a number of years. And in this story, I want to really just talk about how I basically broke my marriage and share with you how one of the darkest and most painful, periods in my life helped me to become a higher and better version of myself. So to give you some setting, this is 2016. It was a whirlwind year. I just graduated from business school, started a new career. There's a pretty big election that year that I'm pretty sure that you may recall. And it was also, unfortunately, the year that my wife found out that I cheated on her. And as you might imagine, it was a hell of a disrupting force in our relationship and in our lives. That night that we had all this come out was a very long, probably one of the longest nights of our relationship. It was full of just argument and awkward and painful conversations and yelling. It was what you might imagine. And I'm reminded of a couple of quotes from then that proved to be very insightful. One was, "The truth will set you free," and the other is, "Actions speak louder than words." And it was in the night that things really kicked off, that the actions speak louder than words part of that became really clear and apparent. And it was when my wife was asking me why I'd done all of this. um, what was the reason for it. And it's easy to sort of chalk it up to, oh, it was for sex, or it was to because I'm selfish, or to satisfy my ego in some way. But that wasn't really what she was asking. She wanted to know, like, the more meaningful why. Like, why had I you know pretended to be this good and faithful husband after all this time? Or at least, why did I stop? If I was at some point, why did I throw away what we'd created? Why did I choose to violate a very important and key part of our relationship in trust? And I didn't really have a good answer for any of that. And I searched for it and tried to come up with reasons and answers for it, but there weren't any good ones. And as I'm looking at this person who's in this just personal torment, and agony, deal with what I've created and put her through, I can't even give her the satisfaction or ease of knowing the why she's dealing with this. And that was obviously very difficult for her. It was difficult for me too, and my perception of self was really shaken by that, because I'd always seen myself as a pretty good and decent person who doesn't go around harming people. But here's this action that speaks a hell of a lot louder than the words that I would give voice to. And I saw that, and we struggled through a lot of counseling and therapy. We end up taking some time apart, separating. It was tough to really just answer that question of why. And at one point, I was living with a friend of mine, just kind of going to work from his place and staying there. And I looked and saw, like, man, like, everything that I've done to the point has gotten me to this point where I am, sleeping on my guy's couch. I'm 30 something, going to work, not even to my home, going back to my home at night. And I just became really present to the state of my life and my relationship, and how it was just so far from where I really wanted it to be, and where I would have thought it to have gone. And it was in a meeting that my wife and I had at Starbucks in our neighborhood, and we were meeting just kind of like go over what assets would go where, who would get what in this, divorce. And we began to talk about the things that had gone on, the good, bad, and ugly that was me, and just the nature of what got us here. And we allowed just like the truth to come. I allowed the truth to just come out and be out there. And what was really driving me, what was the root cause of some of these actions and these behaviors, and what caused that. And I realized in this conversation that a lot of what I was acting out or doing wasn't with great intent. Like I was reacting to things that were more drivers of my behavior than my own desire or intent. And it was that sort of flaw, weakness within me that created a big ass, mess, for my wife and for us. And I started to see, oh shit, like, the things that you thought you wanted or that you thought mattered, they actually don't. You're not getting anything in destroying this, and it's only causing hurt and harm. And you've actually just given up one of the best things that you ever had going for you for absolutely nothing. And that was when I really felt like a fucking fool. Like I really started thinking like, oh damn. And you don't think about these things in moments where you have decisions to make all the time. But I think it's really good to do that, because you can pretend to be or claim to be or believe yourself to be any number of things, but your actions will prove the truth to that way more and more readily than your words are ever going to do. And for me, in our situation, that was when that hit home. And I was driving back after we had that conversation that night, and I got a call from my wife, and she's like, do you want to come home today? And I don't know what really prompted her in that moment to, after all of the shit that I put her through, to even consider letting me back into our home and continue to work on the relationship after all that time. But my answer was yes. And I was extremely grateful and appreciative that she was willing to. And I know it was in part due to the fact that the truth was finally sort of laid out and put out before her. And between us, we saw what the truth and reality was versus the perception or narrative or image of good and faithful, husband and person that I built up, or the facade that I built up and placed there, that which had not served us for the previous, however many years. And I think it was just in that truth being in the space that allowed for any sort of growth and healing and change to occur, because without that, I don't know how someone comes to forgive and to create a space for something else to develop and to grow. And that was what we did. We used that time after that to painfully, slowly, eventually claw our way out of it and into a much better place of truth and honesty in our relationship, to where there isn't anything that she or I would say or do that would threaten to disrupt our relationship, because neither one of us would violate it with anything that we did on an individual basis, and there isn't anything that we wouldn't be able to accept or understand that would come in from the other person. And so it was really helpful for me in our relationship that we did have that sort of breakdown and that catastrophic experience. I would have greatly appreciated it happening in a much less painful way and in a more honest and straightforward way, but it played out the way it did. But I think the thing that I gained from that is that no matter who I claim or want to be, the sum total of my actions and behaviors over time speaks much more loudly than what I've defined or set for myself as a goal, or the narrative I've created in people's perception of me. And in so much as it matters, being true to who you are will be more freeing and more enabling for what it is that you truly, what is truly in alignment with you, than the bullshit and just the facade that you might be able to put up for a while. And I think I lived a life in which I was very good at being disingenuous and being the appearance of who I was at my core, but not really in my core being that person and standing in that. And once I was able to allow the truth to step into the space, it was much more beneficial for me on an individual level, but in our relationship as well. And maybe, that means that there is a relationship that you aren't suited for, that you have to let go. And I think there's a meaningful lesson even in that, because I think it's very childish and something that like a boy does when you want to keep all of the things to yourself, even the things that you don't really have as much care or concern about, like they're your toys. And it's a man who says, like, I can sit this aside and know that this isn't for me, and I'm man enough to step away from it, knowing that that's for someone else. And I think when you're having relationships and connection with people, a man sits there and says to himself, okay, like, I'm going to be me. I'm going to be as loving, truthful, faithful, authentic as I can be. And with that, I will also allow for the people that I attract to step into that space. And if there are people that I am not meant to be with, that I do not attract, I'm man enough to let that go too. And I won't try and like just hog all this stuff and like, oh, I can have my cake and eat it too. I can have the girl and the side pieces and the thises and the that's, and everyone's just believing what I tell them, and no one knows who or what's real, yourself included. And I think that I'm not here to preach to anyone. I've definitely done enough wrong in my life to where I'll allow for anyone and their wrongs to have grace and forgiveness too. And at the same time, I think it's meaningful for a person to know and to be honest in any sort of relationship, irrespective of what the outcome is for them. You may lose that person, but isn't that person, if you do care about them, worth the choice that they get to make, not the choice that you sort of give them with the facade that you put up? And I think for me, I was finally able to step in and share and live in my truth with my wife. And from that, we were made into a much freer, much more loving and open relationship and couple. So what I would say and share with you is that, just really take a look at what it is that you're doing, what you're sharing, what you're open to and what you're not, and be truthful and real about what that is with your partners, because ultimately that's going to be what sets you free and what allows for you all to be at your best. And so for me, that was a great turnaround for us, and a great turning point, and lesson was definitely learned. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this episode and this story. If there's anything that you take from this, I hope there's some value, and I hope that if there's anything that is aligned with your life in this, that you can learn the lesson without having to go through the full experience yourself.